the Chicago Bears. They are now this morning the odds-on favorite to sign Raiders edge rusher Maxx Crosby. Go for it. Ben Johnson's an aggressive guy. Ryan Pohl's an aggressive GM. Go for it. It's the number one need, edge pressure. It's not a roll of the dice. He's an elite player, leads the NFL since he entered in tackles for losses. He's 2 years younger than Myles Garrett, who was just, the defensive player of the year. And here's another reason why you have to strike when the iron is hot in the NFL. Yesterday, the Bears all-pro center, Drew Dahlman, who they just paid a fortune to last year, retired at 27. He's like, yeah, I'm done. Interior O-lineman, beat you up physically, I'm done. And so the Bears with Caleb Williams were the number one pass blocking unit and the number 7 run blocking unit. And anchoring that was this great center from the Falcons that they made a deal for a year ago, Drew Dahlman. He just retired. And so you only got 2 years left with Caleb Williams on the rookie deal. He's going to get expensive real quick. And here's another example of what being passive does in the NFL. Did you see this story yesterday? The goofy Cincinnati Bengals let Trey Hendrickson walk. Well, they've been talking about a new contract for 2 years. They don't sign him. They're passive. They don't trade him. And they just let him walk out the door. They get nothing for him. What are you doing? So Kansas City, in a similar situation where they have to rebuild parts of their team, they need draft picks. So Kansas City's like, we'll take another one. That'll give the Chiefs 2 first-round picks, a 5th and a 6th and a 3rd next year. Next year's the quarterback draft, right? They don't need one. So you got to go for it. The Bears are picking 25th, which, by the way, if Vegas gave traded Crosby to the Raiders, and Vegas got the Bears' 25th pick, you know who's available potentially at the 25th pick? Fernando Mendoza's number 1 college target, Omar Cooper, the receiver. So you could unite Fernando Mendoza with its number 1 split end in college. What a great, and that's a huge need for the Raiders. Wide receivers, their number 1 need outside of quarterback.
This is a fascinating discussion, and Colin has raised some interesting points about the Bears' situation. The reported asking price from the Raiders for Maxx Crosby is 2 first-round picks plus a player. That is a significant investment by any measure, and it forces us to really think about what makes sense for Chicago right now. What makes this so compelling is the specific context the Bears find themselves in, especially after losing such a critical piece of their offensive line. I already did an entire video breaking down that situation, so definitely check that out if you want the deeper dive on the line issues. But adding a player of Maxx Crosby's caliber would obviously be tremendous for this defense and would go a long way towards solidifying that side of the ball. However, here is where my mind keeps going. I still view the true, absolute, bona fide engine of this team as the combination of Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams. That is the heartbeat. That is the driving force. Everything else is secondary to that partnership and what it can become. I have said this consistently throughout the season, and I genuinely believe it. The Bears were leaving at least a touchdown on the field every single game. It was just so obvious watching them operate that the offense was underperforming its potential. The talent was there, the pieces were in place, but the execution and consistency were missing. If Caleb Williams simply takes that next step forward in his development, if he makes the leap that everyone anticipates under Ben Johnson's guidance, this offense has the potential to hang 35 points per game with regularity. We are talking about Detroit Lions-level explosiveness. We are talking about peak Kansas City Chiefs dominance from the Mahomes era. We are talking about an offense that strikes fear into every defensive coordinator, that forces opponents to completely rethink their game plans, that makes people ask, how are we supposed to stop this? To me, that offensive ceiling is the fundamental difference between the Bears winning a championship and coming up short. That is the variable that matters most. Now, having Maxx Crosby would be awesome. Let me be absolutely clear about that. Make no mistake, do not misinterpret me. Adding a player of his caliber makes your team better. Period. There is no argument against that. Crosby transforms defenses. He changes games. He would be a massive addition. But Colin's framing is interesting because he talks about Caleb's contract becoming expensive down the road and using that as justification to make aggressive swings now. The logic is, strike while the quarterback is on his rookie deal, maximize that window, pay the money now, take the swings now. And that makes sense on the surface. However, here is the nuance that always catches my attention with this type of reasoning. If you give up 2 first-round picks to acquire Crosby now, what happens when Caleb does get expensive? You also need those draft picks then. You need the cheap, cost-controlled talent to offset the massive quarterback contract. So there is an inherent tension in the way we discuss these decisions. We say, go all in now while he's cheap. But then, when it's time to pay him, we have traded away the very assets that would help us build around that expensive contract. I am not saying it is wrong to make that trade. I am genuinely thinking out loud here, working through the logic. It is just interesting how we rationalize different decisions depending on the context and the moment. I talked about this recently when making a Cowboys video responding to Colin's suggestion that Dallas should make a move for Crosby. I referenced an older Cowboys video where Colin explicitly said, you do not want expensive defensive players. You do not want top 5 or top 10 paid guys at those positions because none of them ever win championships. And now we are saying, go out and get Maxx Crosby. So what changed? Why is it okay now when it was supposedly not okay last season? For the record, I rejected that take last season. I called it out when it was originally made, much to the appreciation of Dallas Cowboys fans who wanted their team to be aggressive. And now those same fans are saying, actually, we want Maxx Crosby. And I am sitting here thinking, really? But you agreed with that take months ago when it suited the argument. I am on board with acquiring Crosby. I really am. I think he is a transformative player. This is more about throwing questions out there, about examining the philosophy behind these decisions. For me, the offseason becomes much more enjoyable when we actually share perspectives on what we would do in these situations. Because there are no right answers. There is no playbook. There is way more philosophy involved in figuring out how to win a Super Bowl than most people acknowledge. During the regular season, conversations are much more concrete. It is X's and O's. It is injuries and who is available. It is play calling and execution. It is tangible, measurable stuff. Off-season conversations? Everything is open for interpretation. Everyone sticks their chest out and states things with absolute certainty, and it always makes me laugh. People will say they should give a 3rd and a 4th for him. And I always want to ask, okay, tell me what a 3rd and 4th round pick actually means to you. What does that represent? What are you actually getting? And no one ever has a concrete answer. It is just draft capital as an abstract concept. To me, all of this is up for interpretation. I can see an argument that going all in means acquiring Maxx Crosby. I can also see an argument that going all in means not acquiring Maxx Crosby and preserving those resources. I do believe you need to take big swings when you have a legitimate window to win a Super Bowl. I just made an entire video about the Rams mentality because people keep talking about going all in. The Cowboys, whoever. And I keep asking the same question. What does all in actually mean? What does that phrase actually represent in practice? The Rams approach is my benchmark. That was an all-in move. It was a massive swing that signaled, our best chance to win a Super Bowl is today. We are planning for today. We will worry about tomorrow when tomorrow comes. And that mentality is easier to justify when you know your quarterback is nearing retirement. The calculus shifts. With the Bears, Colin's point about Caleb getting expensive is valid. Pay the money now, do the things now. But if you are giving up draft capital, you have to weigh that against future needs. This is where the Crosby situation gets philosophically interesting, because there are multiple paths to being all in. Path 1, you trade for Crosby, surrender significant draft capital, and accept that those picks won't be available when you need cheap talent around Caleb's massive extension. Path 2, you wait and sign him as a free agent, paying market rate in dollars but preserving your picks, then use those selections to build depth around the expensive quarterback. Both paths could be described as all in. Both represent aggressive commitment to winning, but they distribute the costs differently. One in draft capital, one in financial flexibility. With Crosby, he is not a free agent, so the trade path is the only current option. But I am trying to illustrate the broader philosophical question of how you construct a winner. It does feel like the Bears are trending toward acquiring Maxx Crosby. That is certainly exciting and certainly fascinating. I am curious what the actual trade compensation ends up being. I would not be surprised if another team swoops in, though. Before all this, everyone was talking about the Rams as the natural destination because they had 2 first-round picks to offer. Obviously, they went in a different direction with the McDuffie trade, so that path is closed. I'm not going to speculate too hard on the exact deal because these things are impossible to predict. The Rams-Chiefs trade came out of nowhere. Nobody saw that coming. So I would rather focus on the philosophy behind it all. That is a more interesting conversation to me than constantly guessing what might happen next. Those are just my thoughts. I would genuinely love to hear yours. What do you all think about the Chicago Bears and their reported interest in Maxx Crosby? Should they go all in and make this trade? What does that mean to you? How do you weigh the competing priorities of winning now versus building for sustainability? Let me know your perspective. I read every single comment that comes through, so whether you agree with me or think I am completely off base, either way, let's generate some discussion. Let's get into some spirited debates. But ultimately, let's just have fun with it. Please do consider subscribing to the channel. We are building an amazing community here, and I genuinely love seeing you be part of it. My goal is to create something we all feel genuinely connected to, something we are truly excited to be part of. I believe we are well on our way to making that happen. Do not forget to give this video a thumbs up. It genuinely helps with visibility and keeps the algorithm happy. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time.